Prepare for trouble!
Make it double!
To protect the...
It seems like Team Rocket have traded Kanto, Johto, Hoenn and Sinnoh for the grey skies of England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland, dropping their traditional uniforms in favour of some Roadman Nike Tech tracksuits and kicking their trusty Meowth to the side in exchange for a more regionally accurate XL Grand Bully because the UK is in the midst of an absolutely insane Pokemon crime spree. Honestly though, all jokes aside, it must be a terrifying time to own a TCG store, or as we'll speak about later, just to hold valuable Pokemon cards in the safety of your own home. In this video, I am going to run you through some of the more noteworthy incidents we have seen in the last year or so, from bungle burglaries with takes of £80 in loose change and some Warhammer figurines, all the way up to heist-style robberies worth in excess of millions of pounds. So the idea of making this video was triggered by the massive spike we've seen in these crimes in the last 6 or so months, but I don't think we can make a video documenting UK Pokemon crimes and not talk about the Total Cards warehouse break-in or the Ace Grading break-in, because for me at least, that was when it became obvious that the Pokemon hobby had now crossed paths with the more serious criminal element in the country. No longer was Pokemon crime someone swiping a card at a card show or scamming on eBay. Now we were talking about meticulously planned and executed thefts and heists, as dramatic as that may sound. So let's start off with the more recent of these two incidents, the Ace Grading break-in. Now I'm sure most of you watching this video don't need me to introduce Ace Grading, but just in case you don't know what Ace is, it is a card grading company based here in the UK. It was co-founded and fronted by Randolph, who is a mainstay in the UK YouTube scene. He transitioned to Pokemon content fully around the pandemic, I believe, but has always been quite forthcoming about his love for the franchise. Ace was obviously started to be a viable alternative for UK collectors to the big US based grading companies, offering easier submissions, quicker turnarounds, but their biggest standout and the reason collectors even outside of the UK had their heads turned to this fairly new and unproven grading company was their choices of labels. You have their standard label, colour match labels, or the most popular and the biggest unique selling point, the Ace label. These are custom art labels made to accentuate the art of the card inside the slab, usually in the form of the continuation of background elements from the card art itself. On December 17th of 2024, Randolph posted this video to his channel, announcing that the Ace Grading facilities in Banbury, Oxfordshire had suffered a break-in a few days prior, and that the crime scene investigators had labelled it a targeted attack and a completely professional break-in, and that the thieves left behind expensive equipment and items that most people would assume to have monetary value, pointing to the conclusion that the perpetrators had a fairly high understanding of the Pokemon card hobby and the items they were there to steal. The total losses were reported to be around £250,000 in high value cards, and what makes this one particularly sad and nasty is the fact that these cards were not the property of Ace Grading, but the long-loved, cherished and sentimental artefacts of collectors who had to be notified that they would be compensated at fair market value for cards that they may never have sold in the first place. Ace Grading seems to have recovered fine, recently announcing an expansion into a European HQ in the Netherlands and partnering with TCG stores in the US, Japan and elsewhere for middleman services for international submitters, and everyone who lost cards was paid out at that fair market value. Total Cards is a family-run store based in County Durham in the north of England. Founded in 2012 by lifelong collector Adrian Marsden, operating both as a brick-and-mortar location referred to as the Total Cards Gaming Centre and an online retailer countrywide. And in researching Pokemon robberies for this video, they appear to hold the unfortunate record for the highest total losses in the country, with a staggering £1 million of high-value stock being stolen from their warehouse across the 14th and 18th of June 2023. With the thieves peeling back the sheet metal exterior and then smashing a hole in the breeze block interior wall to gain access on not one but two occasions, sending an accomplice to turn cameras in a more favourable direction on their second visit. Reading through the news article on this robbery, it really hits home the after effects that these types of incidents have on the business owners, with Adrian Marsden stating, "I haven't had a full night's sleep since the incident. I constantly watch the CCTV from home after every shift to ensure that this doesn't happen again. My partner is terrified and now really suffers badly with anxiety because of this. We've upped our security, but it's been really difficult to recover. I don't think we would survive another hit." The Total Cards owner was thankfully covered by insurance, and they were able to deduce the £1 million loss after assessing the remaining stock, the insurance being probably the only reason they could continue to operate after such a loss. But they have still said it will take them years to recover from this robbery. And I thought that was a really interesting point, because the monetary loss is obviously the main problem in these robberies, but it's not the only problem. You have the psychological effects mentioned previously on the proprietors, but also the opportunity cost of not being able to serve your customers with the product that they need can be just as detrimental to the future of your business in the long term as a big financial hit is in the short term. Thankfully in this case, Total Cards continues to operate at scale, and judging by the stock levels on their website, most of their stock spends very little time in their warehouse these days. So those were by far the two biggest losses that I could find before and even after this most recent boom in crime, as those two will of course take some beating. But around that same time there was also a rise in pettier theft. Famously, Pokelee's Card Shop Cafe combo had a full binder of base set lifted by an absolute genius who paid for a burger by credit card in the midst of his master plan. And these two galaxy brains who stole £900 worth of cards from a Tesco extra backroom, with one of them appearing to have donned a Tesco vest that they found lying in the store, whilst being in a heavily monitored and recorded environment. But late 2024 to early 2025 was relatively quiet compared to what the same time this year has looked like. In May of 2025, Greater Manchester Police executed a search and seize of £250,000 worth of ill-gotten cards from a house in Hyde, and of course were unable to resist dropping a "gotta catch 'em all." Not much else is known about this one, which seems odd for such a large value of items, all with price stickers, packed dispensers that look like they've been lifted straight off of a shop's counter, and graded cards with traceable cert numbers, yet I can't find any definitive update on these items being returned to their rightful owners. And so that pretty much brings us to the most recent 6-month spree, which has been legitimately unbelievable. If I did miss any big ones from 2025, I apologise, feel free to let me know in the comments, but researching for last year was made infinitely more difficult with the insane spate that we are living through right now, throwing up constant new results. Now we definitely will probably miss some 2026 stories, as there is so many to pick from, and I'll try and go quick fire through the ones that we are going to use, but we still could be here a little while, so without further ado, let's get going. Starting out at the Dice Jail in Nottinghamshire on Christmas Day. That's right, the Grinch that stole Cresselia smashed through the front of the shop before making out with Pokemon cards and other collectible gaming items worth around £1,300 and probably causing double that in damage. If that wasn't bad enough for the owner, Kate Viandi, the following day on December 26th, a second location, Sanctuary Gaming in Sutton and Ashfield that she is a part owner in, was also hit, taking her total losses to £3,000 in 2 days across 2 locations. One day after that, on December 27th, 2 men were caught red-handed after executing an eerily similar tactic to the one deployed at Total Cards, attempting to tunnel through an outer wall to reach a storage warehouse of an unnamed business on Arylic Way in Retford, Nottinghamshire, although a little bit of digging by searching Arylic Way Pokemon throws up a business registered there called Obsidia TCG. They got away with around £10,000 in product, but were tracked by CCTV to a storage yard and caught unloading the boxes firsthand. January 1st, Jake's Breaks, again Nottinghamshire, which seems to be a bit of a hotbed, was hit for £10,000. You might have seen this one as the CCTV images of the Three Stooges-esque getaway went viral, with Pokemon cards spilling out of the bumbling thief like Sonic spilling coins. Again, the damages caused during the offence, just rubbing salt in the wounds. A few weeks later we had another 6-figure siege in Peterborough when Collector's Corner was done for £100,000 worth of stock, with brazen thieves spending 25 minutes smashing their way through a quadruple glazed front door. Owner Giuliano Scribelli told News, "My shop is no longer a safe space for me. I'm watching everyone who walks in. I'm suspicious of anyone and everyone, and I feel paranoid. And that's not how I ever wanted to see my customers." Also adding, if this was a jeweller's, it would be front page news, which I think is more than a fair point, and we will touch on at the end of this video. February 2nd in Cwmbran, Wales, this time, Bad's Gaming had £65,000 in items stolen, with the thief using a hammer to break into the shop, before making away on a stolen motorbike. And while he was later apprehended and the cards recovered, the haste in which he made his getaway resulted in damage being caused to up to 75% of the stolen cards, including a Latias Gold Star at the time of the robbery valued at £4,000. Just 2 days after cleaning up and reopening, a second attempt was made on this same store, but police were quick to respond and apprehend the would-be thief and return the items once again. A man was sentenced to 10 months in prison and ordered to pay a measly £250 in damages, which is absolutely ridiculous, but I think is a prime example of what the owner of the last story mentioned regarding the way these assets are viewed in the eyes of the media and in the eyes of the law. Then one that got a lot of attention due to the victim. On February 15th, UK YouTuber and card shop owner Pokedean posted this video to his channel, detailing the only home invasion on this list. After returning from being away, he found his home ransacked in another attack that seems to have been perpetrated by someone with a little more knowledge than the others on this list, skipping over items that to the untrained eye would appear to hold value in favour of taking more valuable vintage and liquid items, whilst not taking any traceable or serial numbered items like valuable electronics despite them being in plain sight during the robbery. No value has been allotted to Dean's personal losses here, and unfortunately it won't be the last time he appears in this video. On February 21st, Full Fire TCG had around 600 lower to mid value singles stolen from a cabinet, totaling around £25,000 in value after 3 thieves caught on CCTV crowbarred their way into the store overnight, spending 30 minutes inside perusing the stock, deciding on what to take. Owner Ben Powell told news outlets, "I woke up in a panic. It's remarkable, but Pokemon cards have become a genuine investment item." While the individual cards in the cabinets were valued at between £5 and £50 each, when you consider that around 600 were taken, the cumulative loss is a significant sum. On the 4th of March, Trove UK, which runs 2 collective malls in Bournemouth, essentially indoor markets renting out stall space to 250 smaller vendors, had their premises broken into with around £30,000 in Pokemon cards stolen from a total of 7 independent vendors, with, once again, the damages caused racking up an extra unknown amount in total losses. The owner of the indoor market renting space to these vendors, Mark Battistini, told News, "This has affected our community in a massive way, not only through the stock that was taken and the damages caused, but through the long-term impact on small business owners who have lost everything." On the 23rd of March in St Neots, Cambridgeshire, Picklesticks TCG, ran for 3 years by the entire Harmer family, was burglarised when thieves broke a window to gain entry to the store before opening a locked cabinet and making away with a selection of graded cards, with the stated value being thousands of pounds. Nicola Harmer told ITV News, "There's always going to be burglaries, there's always going to be crime. We understand that. We thought that we had the measures in place to secure our unit. I hope we get justice." She is now selling her own personal collection to attempt to recoup some of the family's losses. On the 2nd of April in Digbeth, Birmingham, a gang of robbers went highly equipped with angle grinders and a transit van to cut through gates, then using the van to ram the shutters at Griffin Gaming in search of undoubtedly more high valuable Pokemon cards. And with such a professional approach, you'd have expected them to have succeeded, but thanks to the monitor alarm systems in place, police were rapidly approaching within 4 minutes, so the bumbling buffoon's final take was around £80 in loose change and Warhammer figurines. That was only a small consolation though, as the more gaming focused store was forced to close for 3 weeks, missing vital pre-release events and sustaining thousands of pounds in damages to the storefront. The owner said, "Upon reopening, customers brought homemade treats to celebrate the return of their gaming space. Everyone was so happy to have it back," which was a really nice thing to hear and was actually a fairly common theme that I found while I was researching this video. Communities rallying around these shops in their times of need, whether that's donating cards, helping clean up, or like in this case just a hefty dose of moral support. On the 4th and 9th of April, a small retro items store not even specialising in Pokemon products was subject to 2 incidents of theft. The first of which was Pokemon cards valuing around £200. This theft actually took place during opening hours, with the thief being confronted by the owner of Tentacles of Time, Catherine Meyer. She told BBC News, "I chased him out of the shop asking him to give them back. Other nearby shop owners got involved and the situation became aggressive. That's when I decided to leave it, as I was worried for everyone's safety." The second incident saw her window smashed. With no Pokemon items to take, they instead took vintage vinyls. She has now made the decision to no longer stock Pokemon cards, stating, "I was oblivious to how valuable they were and how many people had been burgled because of them. Kids would come in and trade them, and it's been heartbreaking to tell them that we're no longer selling them. I told one of our regulars and his little boy started crying. Who wants to do that to their customers? But I have to keep the customers and my staff safe. That's the priority." Which is just such a sad state of affairs that even smaller community-driven shops that are not holding crazy values in cards are being forced to take these measures. On Easter Sunday, the 5th of April, Card Catcher Shop in Bristol had an overnight break-in, with owner Sam Jackaway saying, "We were fortunate that only about £2,000 worth was stolen from our premises, but the distress and mental health complications for myself and staff have been pretty bad. They spent only 5 minutes collecting items and were spooked by the rest of the security systems. The police and I arrived only minutes after they left." The 7th of April marks Pokedean's second appearance in this video, this time when his store, Collector's Card House, co-owned with fellow UK YouTuber Chloe, was broken into in the early hours of the morning. Thieves managed to smash and grab a cabinet near the front of the store and grab booster boxes from the shelves, focusing on those probably due to the price labels instructing them of the value, but the losses, which could potentially have been massive in this case due to the high volume of extremely valuable stock often seen in the YouTuber's shop POV videos, ended up being curtailed by the combination of strong security measures, including alarms, smoke systems, and a rapid police response, spooking the bandits before they could loot much. But, as has been the case in a number of these stories, it is once again not only the theft, but the aftermath, the damage, the cleanup, and the psychological effects, with Dean saying in his video that staff members are now scared to come to work, fearing a more brazen attempt during business hours. Now we're in my home country of Scotland. Around the 9th of April, stock, in particular a binder full of cards I believe, belonging to a small store called Vintage Toys and Collectibles ABZ, based in Aberdeen, was stolen from their sister premises, Video Games Aberdeen, whom they had left their stock with whilst enjoying a holiday to ensure that local collectors could continue to trade whilst they were gone. Owner Edina said, "It's not a huge community that is involved with video games and Pokemon cards here. A handful of people in the city keep us afloat. People invest in these things, so we feel disappointed more than anything. Why would you steal from a small business?" A man has been apprehended and cards recovered in this case, but as you can see from this picture here, not all cards will be in the same condition they left in, which is just such an infuriating aspect of many of these cases. These scumbags have no interest or care for the cards, so little in fact that they're leaving them in horrendous conditions during their plundering, rendering them essentially worthless and therefore making their own actions completely without purpose. On the 14th of April, another YouTuber's store was subject to a smash and grab attack. This time, Max Does Pokemon. His Graded Gallery store in Rugby is essentially a franchise or partnership with the Graded Gallery in Birmingham, after Max had expressed his interest in opening a shop during his quite excellent series documenting his journey of starting a Pokemon business on his YouTube channel. After a long series documenting every aspect and struggle of finding and purpose renovating in the right location, they managed to get 4 months of trade before being subject to the fate it seems all TCG shop owners have to worry about right now. No full amount is readily available, but from the videos it looks like they hyper-focused on 1 or 2 cabinets of graded cards and singles near the front of the store. Max has since made an update video speaking on the recovery process and also touching on the accusations of insurance fraud that seem to plague the comment sections of any of the YouTubers who have been unfortunate enough to suffer these crimes. Keep an eye out on the final story of this video for a surprise regarding this one. 2 days after that incident, 3 assailants described as white, wearing black and grey tracksuits, in a silver BMW X5 arrived at the Shires shopping centre in Trowbridge, Wiltshire, before breaking in and targeting a small independent vendor, Skyforge Cards, located inside Micro Shops, a larger store leasing booths or counter space to small sellers, similar to the incident in Bournemouth at the Trove UK Collective Mall. I couldn't find any value or comments from ownerships on this one, or even a real news story, other than the police report stating a number of Pokemon cards and boxes of unknown value were stolen. Inquiries into the incident are ongoing. And finally, we are at the last story for now at least, and this is a video I certainly hope doesn't need a part 2. But around the same time in mid-April, Celestial Collectibles in Warrington, Cheshire was subject to yet another smash and grab style attack, with the estimated losses in stock alone being in excess of £60,000. Before accounting for damages to the storefront, loss of earnings, and all other inconveniences incurred due to these low-life actions. In similar scenes to the incident at Jake's Break on New Year's Day, piles of cards can be seen strewn across the business's front doorstep due to the burglars being too clumsy, greasy, slimy, or a mixture of the three to hold on to the goods on their way out of the hole they smashed in the door. 2 suspects were identified, arrested, and charged in connection with not only this break-in, but also a second card shop in Rugby, which is the little surprise I mentioned when covering the Max Does Pokemon store a moment ago. The Celestial Collectibles owner Chris Grundy told local news The Warrington Guardian the following: "We're absolutely devastated by this, not only for us as a business, but for all our customers who help make this shop what it is. All we can do now is pick up the pieces, build ourselves back up, and come back bigger and better than before. The amount of support that we have had from other trading card game shop owners in such a short period of time has been amazing, heartfelt, and unbelievable. It has not gone unnoticed." Again, highlighting the community aspect of the Pokemon card hobby between vendors to each other and their customers coming together to overcome these trying times. And that is everything, at least that I was able to find. If I did miss anything out, I do apologise. This was actually a little tougher to put together than I first thought it would be. especially trying to keep the dates in order, as sometimes the same story is picked up later on by further afield journalism, or multiple stories are rolled up into one big piece on Pokemon crime. But I did try my best, and so now, how to sign this video off? I think, like I mentioned way back in the intro, a lot of these crimes show a completely different class of criminal. Organised breaking and entering gangs roaming the country, sometimes hours outside of their own hometowns, committing serious crimes that, like Giuliano Scribelli of Collector's Corner said, would be taken far more seriously if committed on a jewellery store or even a more mainstream high street store. I think Pokemon's insatiable, rapid growth has left it in this kind of weird state where we have this multi-million pound cottage industry that has become prime pickings for the most reckless criminal element. Another thought I had is how lucky we've been that we haven't seen any scenes like we have in the States, like the Pokecourt armed robbery where staff and patrons were held up in the store during business hours. But as these overnight burglaries continue and stores and collectors take more precautions to avoid them, how long is it before the would-be burglars then turn to more forceful and dangerous methods because they can't get in during the night? And also, just because a shop's closed and the shutters are down doesn't mean no one's inside. Take the Total Cards warehouse for instance, a massive warehouse of an online business. It's not outside the realms of possibility that there's someone in there working a night shift packing orders to ensure next day delivery when somebody bursts through the wall, and then what happens then? Hopefully the arrests made so far have at least put some dent in the operations, but judges handing out 10-month jail sentences and £250 fines for 65 grand robberies seems a little on the lenient side for my liking. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. I appreciate you if you stuck around to this point in the video. A like and a sub would be massively helpful as I try and get this channel off the ground. Let me know in the comments if I missed any big stories that you know about. Let me know what you think of that outrageous sentencing and the Pokemon crime spree in general. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.